All right, welcome to a kind of a new thing that Key Ministry is doing. This is going to be a weekly thing for a while. This is Idea Share, and we will do this each week and give you, ministry leaders, an opportunity to get a few updates, but then we want to hear from you. What are you working on right now? What resources are you looking for? Because we're all kind of entering new territory here. Those of us that are doing the Sunday morning thing, what does this suddenly look like for us? So we have, my name is Beth from Key Ministry. We have Catherine Boyle, who's our Director of Mental Health Ministry, and Dr. Steve Gersovich, who is our President and Founder, and all of you. So I'm going to turn it over to Catherine to get us started. And again, we want this to be a conversation. So at any point you can ask a question in the chat, just hover your cursor on the bottom and click on chat, or unmute yourself and ask a question, and let's just see what's going on out there. Catherine?
Well, hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. We talked about how we want to have a little structure, but we definitely want to give you guys opportunity to talk and ask questions. It's been pretty intense and overwhelming already the last couple of weeks, but hopefully it's been also a time where you're seeing some of your ministries really rally around the people that you serve. You might want to mute that just because I was hearing myself. So anyway, I wanted to share a few things that I've seen in the last couple of days that we don't yet have up on our website. We do have a page dedicated to all the coronavirus resources that we are either putting out ourselves or we are seeing that we think would be particularly helpful for churches and ministries. So if you just, Beth, would you mind doing the screen share for a quick second and just showing our website so everybody can see what that looks like? So yeah, we put in right at the top of our homepage a link to our coronavirus resources. So like this call and all the video roundtables that we're going to do related to coronavirus over the next few weeks or months, we'll put on this page. We'll put all of our blog posts, any other things that we think would be especially helpful for churches and ministries. One thing that's really super helpful already is this link to coronavirusinthechurch.com, I believe. So I encourage you all to check out what's there. They have basically 3 different tracks of resources for ministries there. But a couple things that I saw over the weekend that I wanted to share with this group, and then we can open it up for broader discussion. We are part of a group that works with other faith leaders across the country. Some of you may be part of it too. Organized by the Partnership Center for Faith-Based Initiatives through the Department of Health and Human Services. They have put out a website of some helpful resources for faith communities. And I'm going to a quick screen share real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is what their information looks like. This is a guidance document they put out towards the end of last week. And I encourage you to either, find their website on as part of Health and Human Services, or find them on Facebook or Twitter. There's also a group that, we're part of that for the mental health work that we do, but there's also a broader faith leaders group. There was a conference call that was held by the White House office that's coordinating the coronavirus response with faith leaders on Thursday afternoon. And they just really emphasized how important the church response is to helping the community, make sure we're all doing social distancing and sheltering at home and taking care of the vulnerable in our communities. So there may be a link, I'm not sure, but there may be a link for you to sign up to get those notifications as well, if that's something you're interested in. 2 other things that I saw that I thought were really helpful. So the next one is Nextdoor.com. If you live in a neighborhood that has a lot of neighborhoods, particularly with homeowners associations, have some sort of community connectedness resource. And this is the one that my community uses. I'm in a neighborhood with 700 homes. So they have recently added this help map. So there I am. But people are able to sign up. The green dots are people who can provide certain help. So you can see in your area, I'm not sure exactly how this is working. Honestly, I haven't signed up for it yet. But apparently this person is able to help other people close to me who may need some specific type of help. So that might be one thing that can be used for communities, particularly where you have vulnerable people living, whether it's elderly, special needs families, people who just need additional support, that sort of thing. And then the last thing I'm going to share right now, let me see where it is. Hang on a second. I jumped out of that and I didn't mean to. Okay, so I live in Richmond, Virginia, and this was a group that was put together late last week for the broader Richmond community. We're over 1 million, in our area, lots of little pockets of communities. And so already 2,000 members, people are posting the things you would expect. I need help with certain things. Here's where you can find certain kinds of groceries in specific stores. But I thought a really great thing that was added, and again, this is a brand new Facebook group that was thrown up just last week. This person who's an admin created a poll for people who are willing to, as you can see, to volunteer, make deliveries, go certain places to meet certain needs. And they organized it by different neighborhoods or communities within the broader Richmond area. So particularly if you live in a large area, or even a rural area that has, pockets of people who may be somewhat isolated, this might be a helpful tool for you to use. So those are my big three for now. So I'll kind of turn it back over to Beth or to Steve, and or if anybody has something they'd like to share right now, feel free. These are all that I have to share right now. And we will be updating the things that we see that we think are especially helpful on that coronavirus page, and then also on our social media.
Steve, do you have anything that you'd like to jump in with?
I mean, first off, one of the things would be really really for us, when it comes to sort of content creation and resource gathering, would be to know what some of the kinds of issues you guys are struggling with and your families are struggling with in the context of the ministries that you lead. And so, that's where different folks kicking around ideas for, how you've responded to certain kinds of requests or certain challenges that individual families are dealing with, that I would see as being the value of this. And then one other thing that I'm going to be doing a lot of media around this week, and something I think that is important to consider, is that, I was looking at the research that's out there in terms of the mental health impact of social isolation and quarantine, and it's pretty scary. And so when you take a look at that alone, and what they found was, and 15 years ago, when they were looking at doctors who were quarantined for 10 days in Toronto because of the SARS virus, they about 30% of them developed PTSD, 30% developed depression, and 3 years down the road, they were almost 5 times more likely than other people in the hospital to have issues with depression. And so that there is going to be a mental health wave that's going to follow about 2 to 3 weeks behind the wave of people, that are going to be hitting the ICUs. And trust me, there is no way that the mental health delivery system is remotely prepared to deal with this. And it's an area where I think churches are going to be called in, to be able to provide a great deal of support, not just to their own people, but to people in the surrounding community too. So that may be something that you guys want to think about a little bit. I did a video podcast with Nils Smith this morning that's going to be shared in some different places. I've got like some radio stuff on Wednesday. And then one of the things I would want to make a point of inviting everybody to is that, like, Nils is probably one of the top 3 or 4 guys in the world church-wide when it comes to like understanding how to use the internet and technology in ministry. And so he's going to be doing a special roundtable on Wednesday, for all the folks from our community in terms of thinking about the different talk about the different types of technology and the ways that you guys can use this in terms of like supporting the people in your ministry. So, definitely get the word out about that. But if you want to get sort of a feel for like what the research data says, and to start thinking about how your church might be responding to mental health crises and those types of needs, take a look at like the blog post on our website today around, the COVID-19 mental health epidemic.
All right, so that's on keyministry.org.
Yeah.
So Key Ministry has 2 blogs, Church for Every Child and Special Needs Parenting. So they're both linked to keyministry.org. I'm curious, how many of you are, and you can just do like a raise your hand kind of thing, how many of you are currently using Zoom or something like Zoom to connect with some of your families? I see Al's hand is up. Okay. I'm just curious, what are some ways, like good, Emily is, okay. What are some ways, how are you using it? And you can unmute yourself or type in the chat, but I'd like to hear some of the ways that you're connecting with families using some of this technology. Anybody?
I could go if people could hear me. So we have a moms group of moms of kids with special needs. We've been meeting monthly for about 4 years. And this last Thursday was our first virtual Zoom one. And I wasn't sure like what the reception would be if people want to do it, but we had really good attendance. And we laughed because we usually eat snacks and stuff together, and so people were eating their own like individual snacks and things like that. And most people said it was just nice to, even though you have to be in your own house, to still connect that way, to not lose the connection just because we couldn't meet in person. We also have some teenage like big buddies that want to FaceTime their little buddies from church. So we've done a little bit of FaceTime as well. We're starting that going. But so our whole state is under shelter in place here in California. So we've had to kind of accelerate some of this technology pretty quickly. So
Yeah,
but it was successful.
You're taking an existing group and just using technology to meet where you would normally be meeting in person.
Yeah, and we're trying to pull in the teens to do like FaceTime or whatever Marco Polo, whatever app they have that they want to hang out with their little buddy.
Okay, cool. Anybody else have anything they're doing they can share with us? Jennifer says we're sending sing-alongs with our drama director, daily devotionals from our staff, and Facebook posting. Great.
I oversee a Young Life group for families with special needs, and what we found is that through Zoom, our friends get to see each other, which was really key, because a lot of our friends are coming from different schools and different communities, and this is the one place that they can kind of let their hair down and kind of be who God made them to be. And so I had families last week after our first Zoom club text me and say that it was the highlight of the week and they were so excited to see their friends because they haven't had the chance to do that in a while.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So for those of you, and maybe for your churches who aren't that familiar with Zoom, Nils Smith just streamed something. I was able to find it on YouTube, and it's a 6-minute tutorial for setting up a Zoom video conference. So that's something you can share with your leaders. They can set up a free account and they can get going with that. Emily says, hey there, I'm running a Christian camp for adults with disabilities, and we're planning on using Zoom to check in with all our campers virtually weekly. We're also going to have additional weekly Bible studies on Zoom. Awesome. Thank you, Emily. How about Facebook? Are you utilizing Facebook groups? Are you using like a Facebook page to, to broadcast? Anybody using Facebook for their ministry? Yes, a couple of you. Anybody want to talk about what you're doing? You can unmute yourself.
We're live streaming our ASL translation during our main service so that our deaf congregants are still able to participate.
Great.
So we have a special needs ministry Facebook page, and we're sharing every resource I can find around the country with our families. We've actually mailed out lessons and things like that to our families because we're a large church. Everything is online anyway, like all of our worship services and Bible studies and stuff. So our families are able to access that as well.
Great.
Our church has a pretty active Facebook group for parents. There's a lot of info passed back and forth. There's people posting videos of themselves and their kids on the Facebook so others can see them. We've already had a pretty strong internet ministry, but the church has gone full-blown internet prayer meetings, small groups, services, all that. And it's actually, there's more access to services now because they're doing more of them and things like that. So it's actually building more connection in some ways than we've had under normal circumstances.
Great.
We've been doing, well, last week we did it 3 times, and that's going to go up a little bit, but doing bedtime stories over Instagram Live and then Facebook Live. So either me or our children's pastor or our preschool pastor has just been snuggling up in front of the fire and reading a couple bedtime stories and just loving on everybody together. That's been fun.
Great.
Yeah, the Young Life Capernaum groups I work with are also doing Bible stories. We've had 3 days in a row of different ones using, I can't remember the translation, but it's good for people with special needs. So we're going to keep doing that for as long as we need to.
Mm-hmm. So Bronwyn is wondering in the chat how churches are connecting children specifically, since they are often not accessing the internet and resources independently. So in the example of I'm pointing down here because on my screen you're down here, Trace, on the example of the bedtime stories. So obviously you're reaching the parents then to share with their kids, right?
Yeah, definitely. We advertise that this is the time that that story time is going to happen, and then our intent is for everybody to gather around as a family. We also did this past week during our online worship service before our adult pastor came on to do the teaching. Our children's pastor came on and did a condensed version of it, and then online that we had told parents about. These are the things that you're going to need to gather during the week so that on Sunday morning your kids can be making this craft to talk about what the teaching is, so that kids could be involved in the adult worship too in that way.
Okay, great. I like that.
Well, I have a question. I've seen a fair amount about how are churches reaching out to either elderly people or people who are not online very much. So I'd really love to hear, ideas shared about how either you're doing it or how you're thinking about doing it, or what you're seeing as possible solutions, to help, keep elderly people connected with their church.
And again, you can unmute yourself if I've muted you, or you can answer in the chat.
Well, one thing I saw that was really funny and a great idea all at the same time was I saw a church that did drive-in worship, just like the old drive-in movie theaters. They all got, they drove up in their cars in the parking lot and they used their portable PA system to broadcast the message yesterday. So, I mean, what a clever thing to do,
The church around here did it, and they actually broadcast on a low, was it like low frequency, 88 point something. They're able to broadcast, just to the parking lot through the radio. Yeah, cool idea.
So at our church, we have a college student who's teaching the older folks how to use the app TikTok. So that's the platform they chose. So, and I think it can be used, for people who are not elderly, but like to teach a whole group of people how to connect online. That's what they're looking forward to doing. So I would have not thought of TikTok, but
No.
That's what.
Yeah, my high school son is currently trying to go like viral on TikTok. So, oh, he says he already is. Okay, great.
I ran into a pastor from a smaller church in the grocery store a couple of days ago, and he was grocery shopping for a shut-in at his church. So they're trying to do practical things for their shut-ins. During our church's sermon yesterday, our pastor Tim suggested all the small groups try to adopt at least one shut-in or elderly person in the church and try to get them what they need.
So I know our church has reached out to staff and to elders, to the session to assign people to call. So just to kind of assess what the needs are and just to connect with people. Is anybody else, are they doing any kind of phone calling in your church? I see a lot of heads nodding. Okay, Jennifer says volunteers are sending cards to all seniors and those in nursing homes. Care facilities are having residents gather in some of their meeting areas to watch our online offerings. And Lisa says we're having virtual meetups as well through Facebook group video chat. We're also placing individual calls to our families in our information system. Good. I know our small group is going to be meeting via Zoom for the first time this week. Yeah, a lot of people are learning some of this technology really fast these days. What are some of the other ways your church is assessing the needs of members of your congregation? Is anybody part of like the care team at your church or know what they're working with? While you're thinking, Lisa, another Lisa, we are doing card mail outs, grocery pickups, continuing Bible studies, and discipleship groups on Zoom.
And Beth, I'm not sure if it was your church or another church, but I saw over the weekend a church is sending out, I think by email, just like a little, basically a checklist card of, do you need any of these things?
I saw that on Ability Ministry. So
okay, that's
yeah, it's definitely, they had a really nice graphic, and that's probably might be where you saw it.
Yeah.
But you can check that out. Ability Ministry has a way to reach out. And I think they were actually, I think they have a printable card that you could actually, drop off in your neighborhood to see if your neighbors need help.
One of the kind of issues we've been running into with our church is there's a lot of elderly people who don't have a computer or internet access, and we still obviously want to include them. So we're trying to do two things: point them to our radio ministry that does play sermons via radio, and then the second thing is we're trying to get a few tablets for our church that we can rent out to people. And it'll just be on like an accessibility mode where the only thing that they can access is the sermons that the church will be streaming. And this might be helpful for some of you if you are trying to do something like that. We found out that Xfinity is doing 60 days of free Wi-Fi via any of their hotspots. So I don't know if that's helpful to anybody else, but that's been great for us to find out, because if we can take care of, a computer or a tablet for somebody, they'll at least have internet.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think, Catherine, maybe you told me this morning, somebody told me, that there was a church that's using like probably freeconferencecall.com or a service that does not video, but audio, so that they could do, I don't know if it was the
They
sermon.
can call in and listen to sermons, or I mean, I would assume, any kind of group meeting, it would be the same sort of thing. But I think initially it's been designed so that people without computer access could call, just like you would on any kind of conference call, webinar sort of thing that's audio based, to be able to listen to the sermon.
How many of you, just raise your hand, how many of you are kind of like part of children's ministry? Like your area is kind of part of children's ministry. So are you mostly creating your own content right now? Are you kind of linking families to existing sites or existing material? What are you all doing? Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've been, there's a platform called Kahoot. It's like an interactive, you can make like an interactive game. So our children's department has made Kahoot and put it on with the rest of the children's resources. So we've changed the game the last 2 weeks. And some of the questions are like general Bible questions. Some of them are general, like about the church, like who's the pastor of this church, like those kind of things. And then some of them link to the lesson. And some questions are just like random. And we've gotten a really good response from it, and families can play together, and kids of all kind of different ages will play. So that's been something that's been kind of fun for the kids to do.
Okay, great. Kahoot, right? Is that right? Kahoot?
Yes.
Okay. Catherine says, we're sending out care packages in the mail with curriculum, craft supplies, and snack. Wow. Wait, you're even sending out the snack? Where's Catherine?
She's the KM.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, and Lisa says we're linking families to our Orange curriculum through our website and app with links to teacher resources too. All right, and let's see. What other kind of, as we're getting into, I guess, like what week 2 or 3, depending on where you are, how long you've been kind of doing the social distancing. What are some of the issues? Oh, okay, Steve. Yes. What are some of the issues that you see as we now look at, we're probably not going to be spending Easter together in person? So Steve Gersovich wants me to share Doc Hunsley's idea. So I don't know if any of you participated in the webinar we did was that last Wednesday? But Doc Hunsley shared an idea for Easter, and that is stuffing a bunch of plastic eggs and reaching out to families that are in the special needs community, that are in our churches, probably in our churches, or we want them in our churches, and actually hiding eggs in their yard for their kids to find. So kind of a neat outreach idea that's, socially distant. You can still do it. But that was kind of a neat, fun idea to connect with families and just, show that you're thinking about them. So Steve.
Oh, one of the things that I think this is important for is that, like, when you take a look at like the literature on, kids, where you have sort of an emergency situation or a disaster, like one of the predictors or one of the things that helps to keep that from being traumatic would be opportunities to be able to serve alongside parents and trusted adults. And so one of the things I thought was like really cool about Doc's idea is that seems like that would be like the perfect kind of like activity for a family to engage in together, so that, kids observing like how their parents are responding to the situation, learn by watching them. And by having the kid have some role in it, it helps to give them a sense of agency and feel more in control. So that's just my child psychiatrist 2 cents.
Well, and Beth and I were talking this morning about, so some of you may have seen these posts on social media about sewing masks. And I don't think that they would be something suitable for medical professionals, but they might be something that would be great for people living in nursing homes who aren't able to access any kind of supply of masks right now. And how if we can do things to engage our families in a sense of purpose, that we all have a role in this, that could go a long way towards a positive experience and positive mental health through this. In fact, I was telling Beth about my grandmother, who was a kid during World War I, and how she and her friends would take their pencils and they would literally knit socks for soldiers that were sent, over to the soldiers fighting the war. But everybody had a role. So, I mean, it really, it goes a long way towards community support when everybody has a role.
Lisa is saying in the chat, we're considering creating Easter baskets for our special needs families and dropping off to homes, as well as one for parents with self-care items as well. So that's great, just really to show people that you're thinking of them, and then meeting some practical needs as well. Oh,
Tracy?
yes, unmute. Let me unmute you. No, wait, we're both, you go ahead, you unmute yourself. Okay, there we go.
I just have a question for states that are on lockdown. We just got put on lockdown. It'll start at midnight tonight. And I was just wondering about, as pastors, the ability to drive around and drop things off on people's doorsteps, and like mental health care wasn't necessarily listed in that list of essential functions, which, we have different ideas about, but what does that mean? Have you guys already thought through that? I'm now starting to think through it.
What state, where do you live?
Michigan.
Michigan, okay.
Okay, well, here in Ohio yesterday, our public health director and the governor, have been doing daily briefings on the public TV station. And the governor explicitly said that acts of service are not prohibited by the rules that they're putting in place. So that you can continue like to go out and deliver things for other people, pick up groceries, do the different kinds of things that you're doing. And I know that like the list of what's considered an essential business is something that was created by like FEMA. It's the Federal Emergency Management System. And that I definitely know that people involved with mental health are considered essential workers, and along with medical people. So I don't think that there's any limitation in terms of people's ability to be able to provide or to access counseling or other kinds of services during this time.
So Emily in the chat just said that Indiana just got the stay-at-home order while we've been on this Zoom video conference. How many of you are from states where the stay-at-home order is in place? So a lot of you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still trying to discern as a staff, like, what does this look like in California? And I mean, for me personally, I'm like, well, if I want to go out and do my essential shopping, I could stop, along the way at someone's house and drop off something as well. I think what Steve had said, like the acts of service. I mean, there are like a number of elderly people that live in this town, and there's a lot of like community effort to support them, and so far nobody's stopped that. So I think it's just a strategic, like, how do you do that without like making your footprint huge, I think is kind of what California's thinking about. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Catherine says she's from Chicago, and their mayor spoke to her pastor and urged their church to stay open in the midst of this. Hopefully that would apply in other locations as well.
Question for you, Catherine, is that, is your church one that provides like a lot of meals or childcare for healthcare workers? You know, what's unique about your church that the mayor would want you to stay open?
So I'm from the Moody Church in downtown Chicago. And I think part of it, I don't know all of the details, but I think part of it was, you know, keeping things as normal as possible. So if people do have needs, our church is definitely on a skeleton crew right now, but just have it open if people do need to come in, whether for physical needs or for, you know, pastoral counseling and things like that. So I know that they had a conference call with her, but I'm not sure the exact details of that.
Emily has a question. Do any of you guys have a good instruction manual on how to use Zoom for people with IDD? So I did mention that I just watched the Nils Smith tutorial. It's about 6 minutes on how to set up a Zoom video conference. But I think what Emily's asking and what many of us are asking is we're trying to get all these people on Zoom is, what's a good way to explain how to join a video conference? Is that kind of where we're going with this question? We've been testing out a whole bunch of different video conferencing options at our church. So far, Zoom seems to be the easiest to get people on. And I don't know if any of you have any other platforms that you've been using that are easier for people who maybe aren't particularly computer savvy, or you know, I mean, we're trying to engage some people who really don't ever use computers, and like, I love the idea that you're able to give out tablets to some people that don't even have computers. But yeah, it's a little intimidating then for them to figure out how to get on and connect with people. I don't have instructions other than, you know, click the link. That's and Zoom seems to be the easiest, where there's the least amount of downloading that you have to do. But does anybody else have any better instructions or experience with this? So Emily, no. I guess, okay. All right, well, maybe one of you needs to come up with that. I think a lot of it depends on what the person, you know, what device the person is accessing Zoom from, but pretty soon we're all going to be Zoom experts, right? Lisa says we help people set up Zoom apps on people's phones, etc., so they just have to click and join. So that's a great idea, Lisa. Just really make it easy for people. We want to kind of eliminate as many of these obstacles as we can, for sure. Emily, thanks you. All right. Catherine, do you want to kind of close us out here? Unless there are other questions or ideas that you want to share at this time.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, you know, reach out to one of the three of us during the week. You know, if you don't have to wait a whole week to ask a question, you know, if there's something that you have a need that hasn't risen to the top, you know, as of this morning, you know, because we're all just trying to figure this out as we go. So Steve Gersovich just sent a link to FEMA Homeland Security Essential Functions. So we'll get that posted on our coronavirus page sometime this afternoon. But yeah, Beth and I were talking about this as we were preparing. We're still in the season of Lent, which is kind of amazing. It's the official church calendar goes on, even with all this coronavirus stuff. But I just wanted to close this with focusing on a scripture that I think is really relevant for today. It happens to be the verse of the day on BibleGateway.com, and it's James 1:12. I use the New American Standard. So the verse is, "Blessed is a man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." So I'm going to close this in a prayer, but my prayer will be that for each of us who are working in some capacity in ministry, that we will all persevere, that we will stay connected to Jesus, so that we have wisdom and guidance for the things that we face every day that are in many cases so very different from what we are encountering on a day-to-day basis. So let's all pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this group of ministry leaders. Thank you for all those who will be viewing this. We just pray now that you will equip your church to continue to be the church, to be your hands and feet in this time of coronavirus, even as we have to maintain social distance. Thank you for the tools you have put into our hands, and may we use them to bring you great honor and glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right.
So thanks, everybody.